10, 9, 8.
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Off. It'll start getting heavy.
Imagine you're a little kid. Your parents tell you to stay away from kids with blue eyes because they're bad. So you believe your parents. You're a little kid, your parents tell you something, you believe in them. You eventually run into kids with blue eyes, you eventually talk to them and interact with them and even play with them. And you realize that, wait a minute, kids with blue eyes really aren't that bad. They're just like I am. But you remember that your parents said kids with blue eyes are bad. So what you're experiencing is something called cognitive dissonance. You have two different cognitions, competing cognitions. One that tells you kids with blue eyes are bad. The other one that tells you kids with blue eyes aren't that bad. What do? Well, you have a couple choices. You could change your behavior, meaning that you could start playing with the kids and interacting with them more, or you could change your attitude. Now, unfortunately, because you're just a kid and you have to listen to your parents who tell you you cannot play with kids with blue eyes, you change your attitude. You change your attitude by insisting that kids with blue eyes are somehow bad. We tend to change our beliefs and our attitudes to match our behavior, as motivated by this drive called dissonance. We do this when we hold two conflicting cognitions. Now, cognitive dissonance theory did not go unchallenged. It was only about 10 years later when self-perception theory came out as an alternative hypothesis to what is going on. Self-perception theory takes a more behaviorist approach and looks at the behavior, and it doesn't infer that something's going on in the cognition. It doesn't infer any kind of motivating force like a dissonance. Today, most psychologists accept that both theories are equally as valid and have use in their own domains. However, cognitive dissonance is still very popular, especially when people have very strongly held beliefs. You probably know many people that have these very strongly held beliefs, and in spite of any evidence to the contrary, they refuse to accept that evidence. What they do instead is change their attitude toward the evidence, and sometimes even towards science. If you know somebody like that, send them here and make them watch this video.
Right, I show you a picture and you tell me what you see. All right. So the maturity level is the same as high school students. It's a mushroom, people. All right. How many of you have ever seen the movie The Matrix? All right, so maybe more than half of us. All right, for those who haven't seen the movie The Matrix, there's a scene in the very beginning of the film where the main character is presented with two pills, one blue and one red, and he has to make a choice. If he chooses the blue pill, he'll fall asleep, and when he wakes up, everything will be exactly the way it's always been. If he chooses the red pill, he'll finally learn the truth. And I'm here today to give you that red pill. But let me make this very clear to you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you how to think, how to feel, and I'm certainly not here to tell you what to eat. I'm simply here to provide you with information. Now, what you do with that information is solely up to you. So, what does the matrix look like? Let me show you. Now, despite what you might be thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right. Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what did we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instinct. Just imagine as a child you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people are taught that lie, that the blue circle is larger than the red, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Don't panic. Things look fake in space. Welcome back to Celebrate Truth. I'm Robbie Davidson. We've got an awesome one for you here today. I've got a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to try to go through it as quick as we can. And buckle your seatbelts because, like I said, we've got a car in space. Pretty much 99% of the world believes this, but there are people waking up. Quite a few people are actually starting to speak up about this. I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, seriously, this is a joke, right? This is a prank. I'm like, no, they actually are saying that this is real. And these people really, you know, are skeptical, but I think this is kind of going overboard. But just look at this. Just take a look at this. It's unbelievable. You know, there's no words for this. It is just, I didn't think I'd see something this foolish, this outright preposterous in 2018. I mean, it's only February. I mean, the year has only begun, people. And we've got a whole year to go. In 2018, we've got the quote of the year coming up from Elon Musk. And what I find fascinating is while this title is Things That Look Fake, you know, in space, you know, don't panic. Because even Elon Musk thinks this is fake. He says it looks so fake, so you know it's got to be real because it looks so fake. And we're going to hear from him himself. But what I thought was really interesting is I've already done a prior video. I'm going to link to it above. So just take a look above there and you should see it if you want to go back and kind of go with the whole overview of what took place a couple of days ago. The big thing is, though, they're in damage control now. They've got science. That's right. Science is coming to the rescue to tell us why things look fake in space. Why does the car look fake in space? So it's like damage control with Elon Musk. We're going to get into it and hopefully you're ready for it. So we're going to start with Elon Musk.
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. Like, we'd have way better CGI if it was fake. And, you know, the colors all look kind of weird in space. There's no atmospheric occlusion. You know.
Now, remember that actually atmospheric occlusion, because we're going to get into the damage control articles that are already started coming out. They're coming out on Live Science, also Express. Other publications are starting to basically hit back because they're seeing so many people in the comments calling out foul, calling this a hoax, saying this can't be real. Even Elon Musk, in his own words, is saying, yeah, this looks so fake, it's got to be real, and haha, joking. And you're going to find how they're using the damage control because I think they're upset that, you know, what he's said, and he sparked a lot of people investigating, looking into this a little bit more, trying to examine all the evidence that's coming forward. So we're going to go into that because I think it's important, and that's kind of the nature of this article. It's don't panic. Things look fake in space. Now, this is the damage control that they're coming at us with right now. So let's go to the first. Science to the rescue. Why does the Tesla Roadster look fake? Live Science. Why does the Tesla look so fake in space? We asked a chemist. All right, so here we go, ask a scientist, and obviously no one's buying this, so of course science has to come in and explain, right? So we're going to get into this real quick here. So even Elon Musk thinks his space cruising midnight cherry Tesla Roadster looks weird. It looks so ridiculous and impossible, the SpaceX CEO told reporters after the Falcon Heavy mega rocket launched the car into space yesterday. That was February 6th, so it was a couple of days ago now. You can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. Musk went on to say that colors in general look strange in space because there's no atmospheric occlusion. Everything's too crisp, he said. But what did he mean by this? Is it true that colors in space look the same as on Earth? Oh, so of course, first off, yes, colors, they look fuzzier on Earth than they do in space, said Rick. And, you know, so they go through this whole thing. I will link to it in the description. You can check it out yourself. It talks about how color looks different, but when you're in a vacuum and you're in space, things look, I guess, fake. So I guess we can call foul on anything that we see because, you know, nothing that we're seeing is true. And again, that's what we've been saying for so long is all these pictures aren't a proper representation. They're all fakes anyways. But again, again, they're all skewed. They're even admitting this here and saying this is not a proper way to look at things. But again, with the car, it's really starting a big backlash right now because there's so many people looking into it and saying, wait a minute, what is going on? But anyways, what I found interesting is he gets down to, there it is, don't panic, right? Things look fake in space. That's going to be their big comeback now. But because colors in space look so sharp, pictures and videos taken there may look as if someone visually edited them. Isn't that interesting? So because colors in space look so sharp, pictures and videos taken there may look as if someone visually edited them. I mean, this is so easy. They could do all these editing and they could do CGI, and now they can just say, well, you have to understand, in properties of space and time in the continuum, yes, it's going to look like it's CGI, and yes, it's going to look like it's fake, but no, trust us, I'm a chemist, it's not. I've never been to space, but just trust me, you know, I've already figured this all out. Anyways, we'd like to get a hold of this guy to even see how he can remotely even come up with this. But again, this is what we're dealing with, right? So, but he noted that he had never heard of atmospheric occlusion. Remember Elon Musk saying, oh, well, that's because of atmospheric occlusion. And he said, must use, right? It's likely that Musk was referring to particles in Earth's air that block the scattered light, but it's hard to say for sure. It's probably Musk speaking off the cuff and using terminology that not necessarily incorrect, but not standard. I just thought it was interesting that he's like, I've never even heard of this. And yet Elon Musk says this in a press conference. He's like, oh, that's probably because of atmospheric occlusion. And it's like, what are you talking about? No one's even heard of occlusion. Here's a scientist. But anyways, I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to get into it. But again, this is live science. The damage control is already starting. They're saying, look, guys, yeah, a lot of things you're seeing is fake. Well, that's because colors look weird and we can, you know, brush off anything because we're scientists and we'll explain things through any which way. But yeah, don't trust your senses and don't trust your eyes. And it was funny because, you know, I was kind of editing the video, putting it together, and you know, Elon's quote where he says, you know, it looks fake, you know, it's got to be real. My wife's just like, look, if something looks fake, it is fake. And it's pretty simplistic, but it's true. If something looks fake, it is fake.
Hat tip to Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, Will, for this, for coming out with this first. But he's absolutely right. What Will's basic point is that the Roadster should be essentially melting, because what's happening here, and I'm going to play this little clip from him here in just a bit, but what's happening is the sun, you know, hitting the Roadster, and Elon said several times that they didn't do anything at all special to prepare this car for going out into space. And of course, by not doing that and just keeping all the stock equipment on there and everything, the direct radiant heat from the sun would have heated this thing up to about 260 degrees Celsius, otherwise known as 500 degrees Fahrenheit, which, guys, if you don't know how hot that is, that's typically the highest setting that your oven can go on broil, right? So imagine putting a Tesla Roadster inside of your oven and putting it on broil, and just see how long it lasts. It's not going to last long. So let's listen to this guy that Will's got on here for just a few minutes and let him make this point, and then we will elaborate on it. So here we go.
I'm Fraser Kane, the publisher of Universe Today. Let's look close to home, in orbit around the planet at the International Space Station. A piece of bare metal in space under constant sunlight can get as hot as 260 degrees Celsius. This is dangerous to astronauts who have to work outside the station. If they need to handle bare metal, they wrap it in special coatings or blankets to protect themselves. And yet in the shade, an object will cool down to minus 100 degrees Celsius. Astronauts can experience vast differences in temperature between the side facing the sun and the side in shadow. Their spacesuits compensate using heaters and cooling systems.
The next question from Marcia Dunn at Associated Press.
Marcia Dunn, AP. What was going through your mind? How amazed were you to see your Roadster up there with Starman just cruising along with the Blue Planet? And how long will we be getting live views, do you think, from the car?
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible.
A piece of bare metal in space under constant sunlight can get as hot as 260 degrees Celsius.
And but we didn't really test any of those materials for, as it's space hardened or whatever, you know. So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space, which I kind of like the absurdity of that.
A piece of bare metal in space under constant sunlight can get as hot as 260 degrees Celsius.
But we didn't really test any of those materials for, you know, is it space hardened or whatever, you know. So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has.
He sounds
like
a genius, doesn't he?
In space.
Or whatever.
Or whatever.
This is how hot it is in Italy. The car has melted.
Okay, so basically what they're showing here in the audio is way down, so I'll just kind of comment over the top of it. This is what happens, obviously, to a car with the trim and interior or whatever when it's exposed to, you know, high temperatures. So needless to say, this is point number one, that the Tesla, the paint should have blistered, among other things. We're going to get to all those other things here, but just kind of want to elaborate on this, that, you know, things cannot survive in that type of heat. And of course, we've also made the same argument about the ISS. You know, the ISS, NASA kind of brushes aside the temperature of the thermosphere because they say, well, you know, because there really isn't enough air molecules up there to provide any convective damage to it. And it's like, well, again, that's not the problem. It's the direct radiant heat, excuse me, that would absolutely cook that. I don't know if you guys remember, and maybe they still have these, but when we first got our very first microwave oven back in the 70s, it had with it what was called it was a broiler plate, a special broiler plate, and it was just basically ceramic, and it had a slab of steel inside of it. And basically what was happening is the microwave would directly radiate that steel, and it would become searing hot. And you could actually sear things in it because it didn't, you know, microwaves don't tend to brown things very well. So they had this searing plate on there that would actually put a little bit of color to the meat and stuff if you cooked it in there. And again, this is the same thing. You cannot expose bare metal to this type of radiant heat without it getting, you know, to 500 degrees Fahrenheit at least, and maybe even more. So.
ODD to Houston. I've made it to the Mars CGI ball. Preparing for landing. Is it even possible to land on this thing? Thrust and combustion aren't even possible in a vacuum. Is this a Disney movie or something? Ridley Scott? Guys? Hello?
Hey everybody, ODD here. This will be a quicker and cleaner version of the video that I made last night. So let's jump right in. There is an island in Canada called Devon Island, and this place is home to the Houghton Mars project. It's no secret. In September of 2015, Jeranism made a video about this, and it caught my attention, and it made me think a lot. Though I was interested, I still thought to myself, that of course they have to have a simulated Mars environment to train in. Why wouldn't they? It's not that weird, right? But since that time, I've learned a whole lot more about the idea of space travel, vacuums, non-vacuums, and how thrust and combustion are impossible in a vacuum. Therefore, space travel is a hoax. Let me show you what I mean with two scientific experiments that were conducted in a vacuum chamber. I'll link these videos in the description, all credit to Cody's lab. This first video proves that thrust is not possible in a vacuum.
Alright everyone, welcome back to Cody's lab. So as you can see, we're using the vacuum chamber once again, and I actually have a little feather right there, as you can see, suspended in front of a 12-volt electric fan. See, I got the batteries, a pressure gauge, and everything in there. To turn it on, I have a little tilt switch, says magnetically controlled. You can see when I turn the fan on, it blows the feather all over the place. This is, of course, at atmospheric pressure right now. So, I want to take this down to Martian conditions. You might have noticed the Martian reference over there. First thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of dry ice to the chamber, just so that the atmosphere gets replaced with CO2. Many of you guys were complaining about that last time. So now I should have a CO2 atmosphere, or at least it'll create one. And now we're going to suck out all of the air, or at least most of it, down to the point where about between 4 to 6 millimeters of mercury, which is of course the pressure on the surface of Mars. So let's plug in the vacuum pump. There we go. Give this a little while to suck down. These pieces of CO2 look really interesting in the vacuum. The gas produced causes them to levitate and float all over the place. But if you can see the gauge over there, you can see that the air pressure is just about to the point where it's would be considered the surface of Mars. So since we're at Martian air pressure, let's unplug the vacuum pump and let's turn on this fan. Place your bets as to what's going to happen to this feather. Now the fan's only going to produce maybe 10 miles per hour worth of wind. On the surface of Mars, the fastest recorded wind speed is about 70 miles an hour. But let's say the superstorm in the Martian had wind speeds of 200 miles an hour, 20 times what we have here. To compensate for that, I imagine the feather is about 20 times easier to push over than a spaceship. So let's see what happens. Okay, fan's on. And the feather's not moving. In fact, let's zoom in on that.
This second experiment proves that combustion is not possible in a vacuum.
So how about something that has its own oxidizer, such as gunpowder? See, this is a mixture of charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate. When heated, the potassium nitrate gives off oxygen, which the sulfur and charcoal uses to burn. So I've got a little bit sitting in there. Let's apply the laser goggles, and let's light it off. First in the atmosphere, and then in the vacuum. Okay, as you can see, it produced lots of smoke and burned rather quickly. Most of the air is now gone. Let's see what happens. The gunpowder did not ignite. I saw some smoke coming off of it, so I know it burned a little. Let's try again more in the center of the pile. And that's it. The gunpowder does not burn. And so I'm going to be burning some rocket candy. This is a mixture of sugar, potassium nitrate, and iron oxide. This is used in amateur rockets because the ingredients are readily available and the amount of thrust it produces is quite high. So let's light this on fire and see how it does. So this is in Earth atmosphere. As you can see, it burns rather rapidly, producing a little bit of thrust even. As you can see towards the end, it moved it around. So now let's try it inside of a vacuum. No ignition. That's interesting. I did see some little poofs as it tried to burn, but it was unable to sustain itself. So even when it's in one solid piece, it can't chain and continue burning. So I've let a little bit more air back into the chamber. Let's see if it'll burn now. That's a no-go on burn. Wait. It's kind of smoldering. And it's out. Acetone peroxide in the atmosphere in 3, 2, 1. Yes, that's a little bit more volatile than gunpowder is. Acetone peroxide in vacuum in 3, 2, 1. It still didn't burn.
So essentially, what we have here is solid evidence that space travel is fake. Therefore, the Mars rover is a complete hoax, and this Mars simulated environment on Devon Island is where they fake Mars rover footage and where they will fake all future Mars footage. I mean, they could fake this anywhere really, Greenland, Nevada, or even other remote islands such as Devon Island. But since the Houghton Mars project is public knowledge, we have a good lead here. Since at least the 1950s, going to Mars has been a common theme in movies, TV shows, and cartoons and whatnot. And what these movies are doing are conditioning us to believe that a trip to Mars is viable, which it isn't. We are merely being programmed to buy into the hoax when the time comes. Stay on your toes and keep a good spotlight on these liars. We need to watch everything they do like a hawk. This has been ODD. Thanks for watching.
So, first off, I'm going to be using this infrared radiator, if you like. It screws into a standard lamp holder, and as you can see, it's rated at 100 watts. So it doesn't emit any light at all, it emits pure infrared radiation. Next up, we're going to use this one, which emits visible light radiation. Again, this is a 100 watt, and it's a neodymium daylight spot lamp. Both of these lamps are used for heating lizard tanks, you know, to give them some warmth. So we're going to be shining them inside the vacuum chamber at a thermometer, just a standard household thermometer. So this thermometer did have some little plastic bars, like a little grill, going across the alcohol bulb there, but I've cut them out so that they're not blocking any of the radiation. So that will sit vertically inside the tank, inside the chamber, with the lights shining directly at the bulb. And we're going to see, I'm going to time it to see what the difference is between vacuum and atmospheric conditions, to see if there is any difference at all, and if it even heats up, because as you know, in outer space, in the vacuum, there's supposed to be so few gas molecules that heat transfer does not occur, or it's vastly diminished, and that's why things like satellites and the ISS don't melt, since they're operating in the thermosphere, which can reach temperatures of up to 2,500 degrees centigrade. I wonder what's going to happen when I put this thermometer in the vacuum chamber. Is there going to be sufficient gas molecules to cause a reaction between the heat and the alcohol within this glass bulb? Does it even need gas molecules? Any gas molecules at all to cause a reaction?
Okay, so before we begin, I just want to have a look at some of NASA's information on the thermosphere. This first web page here is NASA Space Place, and I believe it's aimed at children. But if you scroll down to this section, it says the heat that won't keep you warm. The thermosphere lies between the exosphere and the mesosphere. Thermo means heat, and the temperature in this layer can reach up to 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we convert 4,500 degrees to centigrade or Celsius, we're getting 2,500 degrees centigrade. Since all the other web pages are in Celsius, I've just converted this one to Celsius as well. So 2,500 degrees Celsius. If we go to this NASA page called Solar S'mores, this explains and talks about the solar cycle and it being 11 years. And if you scroll down to this section, it says the solar cycle has a big effect on the thermosphere where satellite drag takes place. During solar minimum, the gas temperature in the thermosphere is around 700 degrees centigrade. That's high, but not nearly as high as the temperature during solar max. When the sun is active, high levels of solar EUV raise the temperature of the thermosphere all the way to 1500 degrees centigrade. So why the big discrepancy? 1500 degrees here at solar maximum to 2,500 degrees centigrade or 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit on this page for children. It's 1,000 degree difference. If we carry on, it says if you were to hang out in the thermosphere though, you will be very cold because there aren't enough gas molecules to transfer the heat to you. So in the context of this paragraph, they're saying although it's 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit or 2,500 degrees centigrade, if you were to hang out in the thermosphere, you'll feel very cold. Okay, so very cold in 4,500 degree heat. So if we go to this NASA web page, staying cool on the ISS, and we scroll down to this section, it says without thermal controls, the temperature of the orbiting space station's sun-facing side would soar to 121 degrees centigrade. So 121 degrees centigrade is sort of beyond human comfort temperature. So we wouldn't actually feel really cold. Although it does say while thermometers on the dark side would plunge to a minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 157 degrees centigrade. So it would be cold on the dark side. We would feel that as being cold, comfort-wise, minus 157 degrees centigrade. But they're not talking about on the dark side on this children's web page. They're talking about being out in this 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit and it being really cold. So there seems to be discrepancies all over the place when it comes to temperatures within the thermosphere. So take a look at these experiments and make up your own mind.
Okay folks, this is test number 1. This is using the infrared only heat source. So it's attached to this lamp holder. The thermometer's in place just there. I'm going to slip this vacuum chamber over the top, but leave it at atmospheric pressure for test number 1. I'm going to turn the light round once I've placed it over. This light is preheated, or this infrared heat source has been preheated now, so we don't have to waste any time in it heating up. So here goes. Okay, let's turn the heat around. We'll place it sort of in the direction of the bottom mercury container. We have a distance of what's that, 57 millimeters, 58, something like that. So we're going to start the counter at 22 degrees. Okay, we'll stop that at 25 degrees and we'll do the same experiment under vacuum conditions. Okay, ready for the same experiment but in a vacuum. So, switch the vacuum pump on. Okay, we've got a vacuum. I'm going to turn this handle, turn this valve off. Now, you see there's a gap between the thermometer and the edge of the vacuum chamber. So I'm going to turn the pump off. And spin the light back round, which is preheated again. So it's approximately 57. That's not bad at that. Got a starting temperature of 20 degrees this time. So we'll take it up to 23. Okay, I'm going to say that's 23. Doesn't look like it's quite straight pointing at the thermometer, but it's not far off, as you can see. We still have the vacuum. So I'm going to let the air back in. Okay. Okay, this is the visible light experiment in atmospheric conditions. So I'm just going to place the vacuum chamber over the top again. we've got a distance of, should we say, 65 millimeters to the center. So I'm going to switch the light on. And we have a starting temperature of 22. Okay, we'll stop that at 30. So it started at 22, and as you can see, it increased much quicker with visible light. Okay, now let's try the same in the vacuum. So finally, we've got the visible light into a vacuum experiment. So I'm now going to turn the pump on. Okay, we've got a vacuum. We'll close this valve. Okay, that's closed. And vacuum pump off. Okay, I moved that slightly with the valve, it's a bit slippy on the table. I'm just going to move that back. Let's get a distance on there. Again, it's about 65 to the centre. Still got a vacuum. Let's turn the light on. Okay, we've got a starting temperature of 22 again. Okay, we'll stop it at 30 again. Still got the vacuum. And I'm going to let the air back in. Okay, next up I'm going to be heating up this piece of matte black plastic that I've got fixed in there alongside the thermometer. The thermometer is just really as a gauge as to when to stop the experiment. I'm going to be focusing the light straight at the black plastic. So this is first experiment is going to be done in atmospheric pressure, and I'm going to use this digital infrared thermometer to take a temperature reading before the experiment begins. So if I rest it on the table, so I'll get it in the same place every time that I do the test. It's a little tricky to do this with the camera. Okay, so we're getting 20.4 degrees, 20 degrees let's say, in the centre. Okay, let's place the chamber over the top. Okay, we can see there's a gap between the edge of the vacuum chamber and both the thermometer and the plastic, and of course we're at atmospheric pressure. So I'm going to put the light in front of it now. And I'm going to use the digital thermometer as a gauge as to how far the light is away from the vacuum chamber. So as you can see, I can move that a slight bit closer. Okay, that's going to be the gauge for the distance. We have a starting temperature of 21 degrees. So let's turn on the light. Okay, I'm going to stop that there, folks. I'm going to quickly whip the vacuum chamber off and get another temperature measurement. Okay, in the centre it's a bit erratic, but it looks like about 50. Obviously dropping all the time, but you see the sort of region we're getting into. Okay, let's try in the vacuum. Okay, now for the vacuum experiment. So we've got that at 19.7 to the centre. So almost the same. And we've got 21 degrees at the minute, but I've got to pull a vacuum first. So it might change a little bit, but let's see.
Okay, here goes. Okay, we've got a vacuum. Turn the valve off. We'll pump off. Okay, we've still got the vacuum. Let's spin the light round. So we've got the same distance. Starting temperature is 20. So let's turn the light on. So we started at 21 last time and got up to 27, so we're starting at 20, so we'll go up to 26 this time. Okay, I think we're there. I'm going as quickly as I can get this air back into the chamber and measure the temperature. Again, it's a bit erratic. But it's exactly the same region of temperature as in atmospheric conditions. So in conclusion, my 100 watt light bulb was able to heat a piece of black plastic to 50 degrees centigrade in a vacuum. If we take what NASA says, the ISS on the sun facing side will reach a temperature of 121 degrees centigrade, which is a little over double of what I was getting the plastic to reach, and that is with the addition of ultraviolet, X-ray, and the heat source being the sun. So if you remember back to a couple of years ago, there was a craze, at least here in the UK, of people buying patio heaters, infrared patio heaters. Lots of pubs and bars bought them and put them outside so that customers could sit and keep warm. There was little point in providing convection heaters to heat the air, since that would be really inefficient. The air would just, dissipate. The heat would dissipate, should I say. So they put these infrared heaters in, and these infrared heaters do not heat the air up at all. They only heat solid matter. So when the electromagnetic radiation touches a solid object, it excites the atoms start to move, and the body heats up. In the thermosphere, it would appear that we're told that the exact opposite happens, and that solid objects are not affected by solar radiation, and that gas molecules are the only things that are. So somehow they've switched it. They've said that the opposite occurs in the thermosphere to what occurs here on Earth. I think my experiment pretty much proves that that's not the case, at least in a small vacuum chamber here on Earth. Admittedly, it isn't the same environment, you know, spatially, but it is a vacuum, and it may not be a perfect vacuum, but nor is space or the thermosphere. In fact, it needs to not be a vacuum. It needs to contain some gas molecules in order for this heating to occur. So it's been enough to convince me anyway that what they're saying is wrong, and I've not seen any explanation as to why the exact opposite happens in the thermosphere in comparison to what happens here on Earth. I've just not found anything that explains why this may be.
So, are you someone who thinks that we live on a sphere, or someone who thinks that we don't? You might think that NASA tells the truth and man has been to the moon, or you may think NASA lies, fakes space, steals minds, and steals money. You may think that orbits aren't real and rockets can't work in a vacuum, or you might just think that this was actually in space. Well, none of that matters today. Let's just prove that SpaceX changed their live stream.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jeranism, back with another video for you today. Really quick, I've had people email me and contact me asking me to prove my accusations against SpaceX, and understandably they don't want to have to sit through and watch my 2-hour video or whatever it was. So this is just a very simple, short, evidence-based video that cannot be argued. Let's get right to it. First, facts are facts. Let's go through a few facts. February 6, 2018, SpaceX had their live stream as they launched their test of the Falcon Heavy from Cape Canaveral. Number 1, SpaceX trimmed portions of their live stream. Now usually this is okay unless you read the Google policy, in which case it states that no video with over 100,000 views has the ability to save any of their changes. At the time, SpaceX had several million more views than the allowable 100,000. Yet anyway, they were able to save their changes when they trimmed their video. Number 2, SpaceX inserted new video over the original stream. What's the problem with this? Well, it's not allowed ever by anyone or any channel. In fact, how is it even done? And number 3, SpaceX moved an out-of-place segment to where it should have been, but after the fact, and yet still, it's called a live stream. What's the problem with this? Well, it's all out deception. The point of it was to fool you. Alright, so let's jump in, let's prove number 1. As you can see here, the original live stream was 43 minutes and 9 seconds, and many people recorded or downloaded this live stream. The video that's on their channel now is only 34 minutes and 18 seconds. The problem here is that we know that channels are allowed to trim their videos, but as the policy here states, it isn't allowed for any video that has reached 100,000 views. SpaceX was several million over that when they trimmed their live stream and got away with what they shouldn't have and really couldn't even have had the ability to do. Alright, let's move on to number 2. Take a look at the screen and you'll notice the time is 1 minute and 17 seconds after launch. That's at the very top. Right below that you'll see the speed of 1,580 kilometers per hour at an altitude of 14.2 kilometers. Then look at the video in the lower right hand side, and if you notice, the graphic is over the video. Well, actually, it was over the video. The video that's now up on SpaceX's channel clearly has the video in front of the graphic. Now you'll see me alternating back and forth so you can see the difference between the original live stream and what is now being considered the live stream. Just one more example here, the original stream being showed to you on the top, the edited live stream being shown to you on the bottom, and you can see the difference by looking at the pink marks on the right side of each of the images. Number 3 was that SpaceX moved an out-of-sequence portion of the original live stream to the place it should have been in the edit version. Why would they do this? Well, no scientific enterprise would ever fudge data, so SpaceX acts as if it is a Hollywood producer. They did it to get that climactic scene change. This is to wow the crowd and to get maximum pop. You'll notice in the image that both videos are at T plus 349, and both are at 10,200 kilometers per hour. But the screens are quite different. So what exactly was going on in the video that wasn't climactic enough for SpaceX? Let's watch the original live stream first and remember to wait for 10,200 kilometers per hour. Well, now, as you just saw, the moment was kind of anticlimactic, especially since someone piped in the sound of what sounded like 60,000 people or so when a map was shown on the screen. Well, what are you going to do, right? It's a live stream. But wait. Movie producer Elon Musk somehow contacted Google. He does what no other YouTube channel is able to do, and that's to adjust his live stream, to reshoot it, to scene cut, and like a well-polished movie, we get act number 2. Remember to wait for that climactic moment at 10,200 kilometers per hour. Yeah, that crowd sounded more like a 20 or 30,000 WrestleMania crowd. The audio, I'm sure, would fit better with wrestling. Let's try.
Booster boost back shutdown. Center core boost back burn shutdown.
Yeah, to me that just fits better. Otherwise, the crowd doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you put an empty car in the sky. Whoop-de-doo. Nobody tell the little millennials that 46 years ago, NASA put a little car on the moon 240,000 miles away on a foreign rock, and they played golf, and they drove that little car around. Elon Musk just got called a genius for putting a car 73 miles high with nobody in it. No one to play golf, nowhere for it to land, nowhere for it to drive around. Geez, next thing you know, people will be going crazy for the Etch-a-Sketch, another 1960s invention. Boy, have we come far. Well, not all of us. So here we have the current video on the SpaceX channel with 20 million views. Still no mention of the swap or the live stream edit, as if that makes any sense. Still with the original URL. Why wouldn't you just re-upload a video of corrections and have both up like everyone else has to do? Nope, instead they made edits to live video, essentially changing history. This video goes to those who see the seriousness of what has been allowed to take place here. I mean, private space agencies getting to do what they want, edit live streams. You're looking here at the landing, which of course was changed as well. And if you listen carefully here, you can hear the announcer say that the videos are in fact different, but once they were finally proven to be the same, well, SpaceX just edited the video.
And even though those look very similar, those two boosters views, those are actually representing different boosters. They're heading towards Earth. They're about to begin their landing burns.
Now, does this prove that SpaceX faked anything? No. Does it prove any of it was CGI? No. So what exactly does it prove? Well, it proves that Google allowed SpaceX, a private company, to do something against YouTube's policy, and something that none of us should be okay with. It's something that no other channel is allowed to do. Who edits live video? Does the NFL, MLB, NHL, WWE, or the NBA? No. Does Reds Rhetoric, Sean Hufford, Slice Barkane, or Soundly? No. Nathan Oakley, GLOBEBUSTERS, Iron Realm Media, or anyone else on YouTube?
And the Falcons have landed.
LZ1, LZ2, both side boosters have touchdown.
Nope. None of them. Interesting. Seems like there's only one dirtball that has tried to change live video and got away with it. That dirtball is Elon Musk.
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. You can tell it's real. You can tell it's real. You can tell it's real because it looks so fake. 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 Because it looks so fake.
That's beautiful.
So be kind, don't lie, and don't edit live streams because, well, then they're not live. Till next time, this has been Jeranism.
By the way, how much money is being spent on space? You should emblazon this in your head. Here it goes. Parts in commercial infrastructure and products and services. This includes businesses that run on GPS. It includes direct TV, weather satellite reporting. The United States is the $44 billion in the upper corner. We spend about half again as much on space as the entire rest of the world. But each of those two small segments are small compared with the total business of space. So there is money to be made in space. So there is money to be made in space. So there is money to be made in space. So there is money to be made in space.
On saying everything's fake, but then look at this. Sometimes this footage goes out. It always goes out. Look, watch, it's gone.
Crossing our fingers, that's not the case right now. Stage 2, nominal parking.
Gone.
So it looks like the landing is happening at the moment. We have lost.
And then this one was weird because normally what happens next is they say, oh, it's landed, and then they show a live picture of it standing straight up. And this time it's different. They get some kind of message in their ear. Check this out.
Or shakes up the antennas.
Oh, and we've just gotten confirmation.
Oh.
Oh.
We're waiting to hear what happens, and so we're listening in, and we're still waiting to hear. We'll let you know as soon as we find out. You'll know. People are cheering.
That's really weird, right? I mean,
hopefully very, very soon how that.
If it's fake, I don't know why they wouldn't just say it landed and show a picture, and then they.
Those were absolutely.
They actually finished the broadcast without saying whether the damn thing landed. Maybe that's why my video got popular yesterday, asking if it landed. I don't know. They probably say it did, but they didn't show it this time. I'm just going to show you how people said I presented no evidence. I was just talking. I don't really always have to have evidence for everything, but as far as evidence, the picture went out. Picture went out when they tried to land on a barge. I didn't really have anything to disprove the other one. Just said I thought it looked like a movie, but it looks like it's probably real, is what we're going to say. These barge landings, I think they have to be fake. I don't know why every time. This is from another video of mine.
Satellite that's pointing up to communicate.
They always, every time, make excuses right before it happens for why it's going to go out, and then it goes out.
We're just getting word that
so
the landing
check this out.
Focus your attention, and we'll see if we can see it.
Oh, that's my old Twitch logo.
Looks like we could see the exhaust gases just in the top of the frame.
Because those things have frozen, which, like we said, this speed, there's no Wi-Fi out in the Atlantic Ocean yet.
You can actually see the deck of the spaceship right now.
Wow.
Not as bad, but they still don't have the other view until it's already down. And then there's one more. I'm going to play you one more.
Now, since planet Earth is a sphere, as the rocket descends onto the drone ship,
it's
we
not.
lose the
I don't think it's a
horizon.
sphere.
As it goes over under the horizon line, the ground stations
Donut.
may lose the communication feed with the drone ship. So we're going to hopefully bring you live footage. We see what you see, and hopefully we'll all see a successful landing once again all together.
It's going to freeze. There, it's frozen. Same as this last one. Frozen.
We may not have continuous video feed from the drone ship right now. Like we said, this
and then eventually...
we don't currently have direct line of sight.
Oh, check on your screen. Sometimes this footage goes out when it approaches the drone ship and the heavy vibrations make it lose signal. We're crossing our fingers that's not the case right now.
Stage 2, nominal parking orbit insertion.
So it looks like the landing is happening at the moment. We have lost signal. We're hoping that signal comes back shortly.
Oh man, yeah. As Michael mentioned earlier, with the vibrations of the rocket and how it shakes up the cameras that are on the drone ship, sometimes we do lose signal, or shakes up the antennas.
Oh, and we've just gotten confirmation.
We're waiting to hear what happens, and so we're listening in. And oh man, yeah. As Michael mentioned earlier, with the vibrations of the rocket and how it shakes up the cameras that are on the drone ship, sometimes we do lose signal, or shakes up the antennas.
Oh, and we've just gotten confirmation.
We're waiting to hear what happens, and so we're listening in, and we're still waiting to hear. We'll let you know as soon as we find out. You'll know. People are cheering, but we'll get the call and know.
So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space.
From the Roadster, right?
It just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space.
that logo that's rolling in here, it just reminded me of a rearview mirror right there, which is something, by the way, that is conspicuously missing from the Roadster, right? And why is that? Because they don't want any reflections of the fourth wall. They've been burned enough on that to know better than to put a rearview mirror in.
It's just literally a normal car.
You know what's funny? That logo that's rolling in here, it just reminded me of a rearview mirror right there, which is something, by the way, that is conspicuously missing from the Roadster, right? And why is that? Because they don't want any reflections of the fourth wall. They've been burned enough on that to know better than to put a rearview mirror in.
and fisheye lens, boom. Now, they've just revealed that all of the cameras that they were using were actually faking the Earth's curvature. Which means, maybe Starman, if he is out there or not, he's using a fisheye lens camera too. This is just horrible, folks.
And it's surreal because things move slowly, but they move. So this is actual footage of this car in a transfer orbit to Mars around the sun. And the position of this payload is slowly changing relative to the sun and to Earth. So if you put it on your computer, it's just like I said, see, that's Earth coming into view. It's like, okay, yeah. I'm pretty sure all the flat earthers, it's really just a ploy so that they can get a free trip into space to be convinced of this.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck. Oh my.
It just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space. It's just literally a normal car in space.
Credit to Harry Growler for this video. And Harry Growler points out something in this video that we've pointed out many times about spacesuits. And of course, we've gotten the rebuttal back on the spacesuits of, oh, you know, 5 or 6 psi is really not that big of a deal. Heck, my bicycle tires have 40 or 50 pounds of air in them, yada, yada, yada. But there's something that people are really failing to realize about vacuums and the measurements of difference between psi and torr, right? I listened several weeks ago, or several months ago, I guess at this point, to an industrial vacuum expert that was on Mark Sargent's show, and he starts talking about vacuums, and you know, obviously they have incredible power to lift stuff, and they're not talking about when they put these vacuums on that they're talking tens of thousands of psi or torr of pressure or anything like that, but the secret behind vacuums is the closer you get to zero, when you get down to, you know, 5 psi, 4, 3, 2, 1, and when you go below 1, then all of a sudden it doesn't seem like it's a linear scale anymore. It seems like it's more of an exponential type of scale. And so here's one of the problems that, you know, we pointed out, talking about the spacesuits and also about the tires on Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster. When you put something that's already inflated or even has almost no air in it whatsoever, as this balloon does, virtually no air whatsoever, and you subject it to a vacuum, and mind you, this vacuum is nowhere near what is going on out in space, it will inflate and essentially blow up. Do you see any problems with the tires on Elon Musk's car? Absolutely not. The same thing would be happening with the spacesuits as well. And you know, for you trolls out there that come back with the ridiculous argument of oh, well, you know, 14 psi isn't that much, or 6 psi isn't that much. That's not the point. The point is when you get below 1 psi and you go into the torr measurements, that's when things dramatically change. So what should have happened to Elon Musk's car is it should have absolutely blown all 4 tires out long before, probably when the rocket hit, you know, somewhere between 100 and 150,000 feet would be my guess, probably even less than that. Those tires should have absolutely just exploded. Straight up exploded.
We're NASA.
What about the breathing, the panting, the moaning, the screaming?
Fake.
Hey guys, how's it going? So my question for NASA is, how are you ensuring the safety of our astronauts in a vacuum? I want to make sure our astronauts have the proper training to survive the deadly vacuum of space. Proper training means you train in an environment that most closely resembles the harsh environment you'll be exposed to. Now there are 2 issues that I have with NASA's training practices. Number 1 involves the fact that NASA trains astronauts in a swimming pool, when in actuality they are supposedly going to be working in the exact opposite environment of outer space. And my second issue with NASA is its ability to even create a vacuum here on Earth that is sufficiently similar to the alleged vacuum of outer space. So before we begin, let's see how NASA creates a vacuum here on Earth.
Spaceball 1 has now become Mega Made. Good. Remarkable. Now, commence Operation Vacuum Suck.
So this here is the Great Space Power Facility at NASA's Plum Brook Station in Sandusky, Ohio, which they built with our money. This is the world's largest and most powerful and expensive vacuum. Some of the test programs that have been performed at the facility include high-energy experiments, full-scale rocket fairing separation tests, Mars lander system tests, deployable solar sail tests, and International Space Station hardware tests. I mean, construction costs were astronomical. So is the upkeep and maintenance. And obviously there's no astronaut training going on in there. And a little later I will show you exactly what they do with it. They use it for propaganda videos and drop a feather and a bowling ball. Ugh. Anyways, so first off, this chamber makes a high vacuum. That's all it can do. And this high vacuum is 3 levels before the vacuum of outer space. So it's not even as powerful as the vacuum of space in which they will be working. And for those of you who don't think a vacuum is powerful, and that the pressure difference between a vacuum and the atmosphere in which we live is not powerful, check out what a vacuum can lift, and then think about what it would do to a puny tin can in space, or a wimpy spacesuit, especially over time, or if there's any minuscule imperfection or leak. So check this out.
We're loading 42-inch 480 wall steel pipe, 3 to a truck. Pipe are about 40 feet in length, and they weigh about 9,000 pounds. We're loading them with an AccuVac vacuum attachment on a 450 John Deere hoe. Pipe weigh about, I think I said the pipe weigh about 9,000 pounds a piece. This vacuum attachment will pick, this one I think will pick 30,000 pounds. That's 15 tons just on a vacuum.
Now that's power. And it is funny how the vacuum chamber, like a submarine, has massively thick walls to withstand the difference in pressure. This is because, in the case of a submarine, the submarine must survive the difference in pressure that exists between the ocean, deep in the ocean, and the ground-level atmosphere inside the submarine. Without very thick and structurally sound walls, the pressure difference would crush the sub. Likewise, the ISS and the spacewalking astronauts must survive the opposite but equally harsh difference in pressure that exists between the vacuum of space and the normal atmosphere inside their suit or inside the space station. So again, it's funny that they need extremely thick and structurally solid walls for a submarine and a vacuum chamber, but for some reason, in the more powerful vacuum of outer space, you can survive in a flimsy spacesuit or the tin can known as the ISS. Sounds legit. To illustrate this even further, on the vacuum scale, this monstrosity of NASA, our great space power facility, is only a high vacuum. You can see from the chart that outer space is 3 levels of vacuum beyond NASA's most powerful vacuum, which they don't even train in anyways. And all of NASA's other vacuum chambers are only medium vacuums. So right there, that's a fail. They can't even recreate the vacuum of outer space. And they don't train in a vacuum. There's almost no footage at all of any astronauts even in a vacuum chamber. And plus, they even tell you it's their policy to only train underwater. They don't train in a vacuum chamber. This is a complete fail. I'll come back to this point in a minute, but before that, I want to discuss the major problems I have with NASA's policy of training astronauts in a gigantic swimming pool. And really the only alleged benefit of training underwater in a pool, they say, is that it simulates zero gravity. Well, actually, it doesn't even simulate zero G. It only simulates zero G on camera, in a video, making videos, but not in practice. To summarize why training underwater is a complete fail, I made a list of 8 problems with training underwater as opposed to training with something like a zero-G wire system in a warehouse. So here we go. Number 1, pressure underwater is the complete opposite of the vacuum of space. Underwater, the pressure is extremely high and will compress, it'll crush you with extreme force. In a vacuum, pressure is extremely low, there's no pressure, and you will explode. Your spacecraft will explode with the extreme force, and it will do so outward, the opposite direction of underwater. So why in the world would you train under conditions that are opposite those in which you will be working? This makes no sense at all. Total fail. Number 2, resistance in movement. Underwater, moving around and pushing off of things will be much slower and tedious as opposed to the vacuum of space. At least if training is done in a warehouse on wires, there will be less resistance, which is at least closer to the complete lack of resistance in space. Water is the exact opposite of a vacuum. There's a great deal of resistance when you move around underwater. Number 3, it makes no sense to construct a full-scale model of the ISS underwater. An ISS replica could easily be constructed in a large warehouse or a hangar. It would be much easier to build, maintain, modify, etc. This is just silly to do it underwater. Number 4, teams of safety divers and camera crews must also risk their lives underwater for astronaut training, with the unnecessary burdens of tanks, gear, tools, parts, cameras, production equipment, etc. Instructors could be more helpful in a normal environment with astronauts on wires in a warehouse. It would also be easier for the camera crews to fake it. Number 5, it costs millions to maintain the gigantic swimming pool. The underwater ISS model, the crews, equipment, it would be a fraction of the cost to use a warehouse with wires and a normal ISS replica. Common sense. Number 6, the performance and integrity of a spacesuit underwater is going to be the opposite of how it would perform and hold up in a vacuum. Training on wires at normal atmospheric pressure would at least be closer to movement in a vacuum than underwater, and how a spacesuit would react. A real vacuum chamber testing would be the best, but again, training underwater makes no sense. Number 7, weight distribution, inertia, movement, and reactions would be completely different underwater. Training to move and work with zero-G wire systems in a normal atmosphere would be closer to the alleged vacuum of space. Number 8, spacesuits, gear, tools, equipment, spare parts, etc. are all designed for use in space, in a vacuum, not underwater. Tools such as drills, wrenches, hammers, bolts, quick releases, they would all behave completely differently underwater. This makes no sense to train to use these underwater.
I'm astonished by how difficult it is to actually move around. The idea, like from the movie Gravity, that you could like reach out and grab something with one of these gloves? No way. Not gonna happen.
So, there are no benefits to training underwater, in my opinion. But there are many disadvantages and outright dangerous issues if you train underwater. The better option would be to train on the ground in a warehouse with wires just like they do in the movies. They can simulate zero-G just fine with puppeteers and wire systems. They can do this in a normal atmosphere with less resistance than underwater, so at least it's a little closer to moving around in space and operating and fixing things in space, if it was reality. So anyways, I mean, we know why they train in a pool. It's for the simple reason that on camera, floating around in a pool has the appearance of floating in space. That's it. Otherwise, it makes no sense whatsoever to train underwater. In fact, it's just silly and foolish. But we don't use our brains and ask questions about what they do with our hard-earned money. We just see it on the news and we believe it. Now, here is one of the few instances of an astronaut supposedly in a vacuum chamber. This could be made for TV drama from the 60s, but I think it's probably real. I think that they tried to use a spacesuit in a vacuum chamber, but quickly realized that it's impossible, at least in a high vacuum. So they immediately started their policy of only using swimming pools to train, and completely ignoring and remaining silent on the absence of vacuum chamber training of astronauts. And check out the caption. It says, "The video above shows the moments when Jim LeBlanc was subjected to a space-like vacuum, space-like, it's a medium vacuum, in a NASA testing chamber in 1965. Interestingly, although an accident, it's one of the only experiments into how a human would cope in such conditions, and thus our modern knowledge of the effects rely upon this incident." We're relying upon this one time they tried to put somebody in a vacuum chamber? Whew, it's pretty pathetic.
As I stumbled backwards, I could feel the saliva on my tongue starting to bubble just before I went unconscious. And that's kind of the last thing I remember.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And originally I had a clip of the BBC video with Brian Cox where they dropped a feather and a bowling ball in a pathetic attempt to prove gravity, and I had to take it out because that was the first thing that got this video blocked. And I'll put the link in the description, but it's a horrible spectacle showing how they waste massive amounts of our tax money as they prepare the gigantic space power facility and operate it just to film the propaganda feather and bowling ball drop. And they all react like it's the greatest thing they've ever seen, and I don't know about anyone else, but I'm sick and tired of working my butt off so these jokers can waste my money on ridiculous productions like this. I mean, this facility is enormous, and even just sitting there unused, it takes massive amounts of money to maintain. And even more so when all of the workers have to show up and operate it for the propaganda. Heck, every time you shut the giant door, it probably costs thousands of dollars. And again, we pay them to create propaganda for us. Not the best use of capital, in my opinion. And then the next clip is the one that just got this video removed, and this was the clip from Smarter Every Day. I guess he didn't like how ridiculous he and astronaut Donald Petit looked when they discussed the shutters on the cupola of the International Space Station. They basically talk about the tiny little O-rings that are used to create a seal for the 7 handles that open and close the shutters. They operate the handles from inside the cupola, and these handles close the shutters on the outside of the space station. So for me, the worst part was how ignorant Donald Petit was when asked what to do in the event of a leak in the seal. He's like, then you have a leak. Probably seal off the cupola. There's probably a plan. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's probably a plan to replace the mechanism. It might require a spacewalk, all nonchalantly. And it's like, what in the world is he thinking? This is horrible. If the ISS were real, there would be a procedure for every possible contingency.
What's going on? Sanders, what's going on? It's Megamaid. She's gone from suck to blow.
On submarines, you train and practice emergency drills all the time. Even the lowest ranking member on a sub will know what to do in the event of an emergency. This is Donald Petit, an elite astronaut. The astronauts are supposed to be the best and brightest, having to beat out hundreds of qualified people to become a NASA astronaut. I mean, are you kidding me? Where are the drills? What are the procedures? They would have a specific procedure for every type of incident. Loss of pressure, leaking seals, micrometeorite penetration, ammonia leak. I mean, come on, this is horrible. Where are the drills? The first thing they would show in videos would be them rehearsing drills. But instead, we get videos of spinning stuffed animals and making tacos, washing hair, blowing bubbles in space. I mean, really? Does anyone believe this stuff? If it were real, there would be non-stop, serious drills about how to stay alive in the event of an emergency. Then at the end, Mr. Smarter Every Day even exclaims, "You have the vacuum of space being held back by 2 little bitty O-rings. That's incredible." Well, he's right there. It is incredible that people believe it. And shame on us for being ignorant for all of these years. But anyways, at least we know now, and we can observe these things in greater detail with objectivity. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope you all have a nice day. Adios.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Bling Bling. I've been asked by some of my subscribers to put together a video expressing my thoughts and observations on the Tesla in space. So I've done that. I've found a couple of things. So without further ado, enjoy. It started pretty quickly for me when I saw this white object float into the screen. And here we get our first observation of Australia. I want you to notice the pattern of the clouds. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Well guys, I found the curvature. Look on the left at the bottom how it wraps around. I guess we were wrong after all. There's the curvature. This black mark is interesting, and so is the cloud pattern around it. That seahorse head looks very interesting. Remember it. Here's that same seahorse head image on another orbit. And here is another rotation, and here is that same image and the same clouds, the same seahorse, and the same 2 other clouds to the side of it. Here's the second orbit of Australia. It seems like only Australia was able to be seen from this deep in space with the Tesla. And what's also strange is the fact that the clouds never changed at all during 3 orbits. It's the 3rd orbit. They blurred out the clouds here. You can see that. I guess it's too difficult to make new clouds. And here is a screenshot of all 3 orbits. And the clouds are all the same. Stop the video and study it if you must to see that I'm telling you the truth. These clouds are identical. They haven't changed. Go ahead and stop the video here and study this if you must, because you'll see that the only thing that's different is the size of the clouds have been resized smaller. And I think this is flat out mockery. Surely they can't expect us to think those are stars, so maybe they are just mocking us with some bubbles in space. And here's that squiggle cloud again. It's exactly the same as the last one. Maybe it's a chemtrail. I don't know, but look. Don't take my word for it. Look closely yourself. Those clouds are identical. So I grabbed a screenshot and changed the luminance, and lo and behold, the camera noise was completely shot in patterns and right off the back of the car, right into the blackness of space. And I recognize that this was from a video, so the artifacts may have changed, but somehow I don't think they could have changed that drastically. Here is Elon Musk with his car, and I did the exact same thing with the luminance, and as you can see, it doesn't look anything like that. So here we have the International Space Station on the left, and the Tesla footage on the right. Notice how when the station orbits the Earth seems to slide down, and it makes it look like the Earth is rotating. But when the Tesla is orbiting the Earth just slips on past and leaves the frame over and over again. But the ISS never leaves the frame. It always stays exactly where it is, except it just makes it look like the Earth is rotating, or the International Space Station is traveling around, whichever way you want to look at it. Also, the colors are a lot different. I guess you're too far out with the Tesla to be able to see the different shades of blue of the ocean. Take note here when the camera gets bumped on the space station on the left, and how odd that the Earth starts going back and forth, back and forth. Normally when you bump your camera, your subject continues to make its natural movement. It's just the camera going back and forth, but not in this case. And with all the water that they showed, you would think that they would show some water sparkle like they do off the space station. But the footage on the right is very flat through the entire video.